At exactly EO 4:36 hours local time, American surveillance drones flying over the Strait of Hormuz detected something that immediately triggered emergency alerts inside U.S. Central Command. Dozens of Iranian naval vessels were no longer moving. Fast attack boats, missile corvettes, support ships. Even portions of the Revolutionary Guard's coastal fleet appeared trapped inside shrinking operational zones near Bandar Abbas and Qashm Island. And then satellite imagery confirmed the worst possible scenario for Tehran. Iran's remaining operational fleet in the Gulf was rapidly losing freedom of movement. Because the Strait of Hormuz, the most important maritime chokepoint on Earth, was becoming a battlefield controlled increasingly by overwhelming American naval surveillance and air power. Inside Pentagon command rooms, analysts realized something critical had just happened. Iran's asymmetric naval strategy was beginning to collapse under sustained pressure, and that could change the entire balance of power in the Gulf. To understand why this moment is so dangerous, you need to understand how Iran built its naval doctrine in the first place. For decades, Tehran understood it could never defeat the U.S. Navy in a conventional head-to-head battle. So instead, Iran designed an entirely different strategy: swarm warfare, fast boats, naval mines, shore-based missile batteries, suicide drones, electronic warfare, submarines hidden in shallow coastal waters. The goal was never to destroy the U.S. Navy directly. The goal was to make the Strait of Hormuz too dangerous to operate in. And for years, that strategy worked, because the geography of Hormuz heavily favors asymmetric warfare. At its narrowest point, the shipping corridor is barely wide enough for large-scale naval maneuvering. Oil tankers, destroyers, civilian ships, drones, and submarines all operate inside an incredibly compressed maritime space surrounded by Iranian missile territory. In military terms, it is a perfect ambush environment. But over the last several weeks, the situation changed dramatically. American destroyers intensified escort operations through the strait, while U.S. surveillance aircraft, satellites, submarines, and carrier-based fighters created near-continuous monitoring coverage across the Gulf. And then, the pressure began tightening around Iran's fleet itself. At approximately 05:02 hours, intelligence analysts reviewing maritime tracking data noticed a disturbing pattern for Tehran. Iranian naval vessels were avoiding open water movement. Several ships remained anchored for unusually long periods. Others repositioned only at night. Some disappeared into protected coastal zones near IRGC naval facilities. Military planners suspected one reason immediately. Iran feared losing ships the moment they entered exposed waters, because American reconnaissance dominance had become overwhelming. At the same time, U.S. naval patrols reportedly expanded near key exit corridors, connecting Bandar Abbas to the Gulf of Oman, while airborne radar aircraft monitored virtually every major movement across the region. And then came the incident that may have changed everything. At 05:41 hours, Iranian fast attack craft attempted another aggressive maneuver near escorted shipping lanes inside Hormuz. U.S. destroyers responded immediately with warning operations, while carrier-based aircraft moved into low-altitude strike posture above the area. The Iranian boats turned back. But what happened afterward terrified Iranian commanders. American drones continued shadowing portions of the IRGC naval flotilla for hours afterward, effectively tracking their return routes and coastal staging zones in real time. For Iran, this represented a nightmare scenario, because the effectiveness of swarm warfare depends heavily on surprise, concealment, and chaotic movement. Once constant surveillance removes uncertainty, asymmetric naval tactics become far more vulnerable, and Tehran knows it. At 06:13 hours, additional commercial satellite imagery reportedly revealed several Iranian vessels repositioning deeper inside heavily protected coastal sectors rather than operating near the center of the strait. Analysts began asking a dangerous question. Was Iran's fleet no longer contesting open control of Hormuz? Instead, was it being forced into defensive survival mode? That possibility matters enormously, because Iran's ability to threaten Hormuz has always depended on mobility, fast attacks, rapid dispersal, hidden launch points, unpredictable swarm operations. But now American forces increasingly appear capable of identifying and tracking many of those movements before attacks even occur. This is modern maritime warfare evolving in real time. Not just missiles and ships, but sensors, satellites, drones, electronic surveillance, AI-assisted tracking systems. The side that sees first increasingly controls the battlefield. At the same time, Iran faces another growing problem: logistics. Reports indicate that portions of Iranian maritime supply infrastructure have suffered repeated disruption during the broader Gulf confrontation. Fuel storage sites, coastal radar systems, and missile coordination nodes near southern Iran have reportedly been targeted during recent exchanges involving U.S. and Israeli operations. That creates enormous strain on sustained naval operations, especially inside confined waters already dominated by enemy air power. At 06:48 hours, shipping intelligence networks reported another dramatic decline in commercial vessel movement through Hormuz as insurance costs surged and civilian captains avoided the region entirely. And beneath the economic shockwaves, military pressure kept rising. American destroyers continued escort operations. Reconnaissance drones remained overhead. Submarines from multiple nations maneuvered silently beneath Gulf waters. Meanwhile, Iranian commanders reportedly accelerated efforts to reposition military assets inland, using alternative supply corridors through Pakistan, the Caspian Sea, and rail links toward China. That detail may reveal the most important reality of all. Iran increasingly fears strategic isolation, because if Hormuz becomes impossible to operate freely, Tehran risks losing not only maritime leverage, but also the ability to sustain large-scale naval operations inside the Gulf itself. And that changes the balance of deterrence dramatically. At 07:21 hours, electronic SIUSOPs, warfare activity intensified across portions of the Gulf as multiple vessels reported intermittent GPS disruption and communications interference. Military analysts believe both sides are now fighting aggressively for control of the electromagnetic spectrum surrounding Hormuz. This is the invisible side of modern war. Blind the sensors, disrupt targeting, corrupt navigation, control information, and entire fleets suddenly become vulnerable. At the same time, American military planners remain extremely cautious, because cornered forces can become unpredictable. Iran still possesses anti-ship missiles, naval mines, submarines, drones, and large numbers of fast attack craft capable of inflicting serious damage under the right conditions. And the geography of Hormuz remains brutally dangerous for any navy operating there. One successful missile strike, one mining operation, one swarm attack, and the entire global economy could feel the impact instantly. Nearly 20% of the world's oil supply depends on this narrow waterway. Tonight, American warships continue patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, while Iranian naval units remain concentrated near protected coastal zones. Surveillance aircraft circle overhead. Missile batteries remain active along the Iranian coastline. Oil markets remain unstable as global shipping companies reroute vessels away from the Gulf. No full-scale naval war has erupted. Not yet. But something critical has undeniably changed. Iran's fleet is no longer operating with confidence across Hormuz. It is increasingly operating under pressure, tracked, watched, contained. And if Tehran truly begins losing freedom of movement inside the Gulf, the entire strategic equation of the Middle East could begin shifting faster than anyone expected. Because in modern warfare, the moment a fleet becomes trapped, the countdown toward escalation often begins.